We move away from a fantastic weekend in Iowa and head to the streets of Toronto. Welcome back to Canada and this fantastic street circuit once again on the calendar. It's the first practice session and we're moments away from all the action kicking off. Hello everybody, let's cross over to INDYCAR Radio for the start of Free Practice 1.
This is the NTT INDYCAR Series. With live coverage of today's practice, this is the INDYCAR Radio Network.
Popular stop on the NTT INDYCAR circuit. The Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto from the streets of Toronto. Welcome everyone. Mark James, a whole host of folks set to take you through the next about an hour and a half since we're on a street course. The format for today, a 45-minute all skate, followed up by a couple of 10-minute sessions in which they'll divide the field in half. And this should give everybody an opportunity to get some qualifying sims laid down on those alternate compounds a little bit later on in this session. Happy to have with us on pit road this weekend, Alex Wolf. Alex, looks like a picture-perfect day here in Toronto.
Oh, absolutely. Postcard weather here in Exhibition Place. Sunshine, blue skies, and I am hard-pressed to find a cloud in the sky as we're in the shadows of BMO Field, the home of the Toronto Argonauts and soccer's Toronto FC. Ambient temperature 77, track temperature at 114. Firestone sensors around the track for the temperatures, and at start-finish 103 degrees. Just before turn 3 at 122, turn 6 at 113, and up at turn 9 117 degrees. So as installation laps are going on right now, the car is coming back onto the pit lane. Just picture perfect weather conditions, with a capital P here in Toronto for practice 1.
And thank you, Alex. Look forward to your contributions all throughout the course of the weekend. Our driver analyst, Davey Hamilton, will join us on Sunday. Had some other commitments today and tomorrow, but we are thrilled to have with us a multi-talented racer, a guy that make anything with wheels and a motor go fast. He's been with us before in the past. We're happy to have him with us here again. We say welcome to Matthew Brabham. Hello, Matthew.
Oh, hey guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on board. And the weather's great. I just made it here in time. And it's looking like a great weekend. I can't wait to call it with you guys.
Well, now this format, Matthew, from a driver's perspective, I know that some have talked about this street course format with the 45-minute all skate and then the two separate 10-minute sessions. From a driver's perspective, I guess the hope is that you're going to take some time during those two 10-minute sessions to hopefully get some good qualifying sims in. Is that the goal?
Yeah, I think that's the prediction, and that's probably what the drivers are pushing for. I know we saw a lot of contact and a lot of shenanigans going on at Detroit, especially with Ferrucci and drivers blocking each other. And I think this is just a push to kind of quiet things down, especially in practice sessions where it doesn't matter. But I think it's geared towards just getting those guys some clear laps at the end of the session. How many qualifying runs we see, I'm not sure, because there is another practice tomorrow. And as I said, I don't know how quickly they're going to want to go out there and do qualifying runs on a green track. But we'll see. And yeah, as I said, I think this is definitely a collaboration between the drivers, the stewards, to try and get these guys some clean laps without having to do those big blocking moves in practice, rubbing and pushing each other off just to get clean track, which we saw a lot at the last couple of street tracks. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, you talked about the significance of a green racetrack, and with this one, when it's green, it's particularly tricky because you're going to have 4 or 5 different compounds of pavement. I mean, you're going to have concrete, you're going to have asphalt, different types of asphalt, and there's also a fair amount of, painting in terms of the street markings and lane markings and crosswalks and whatnot, and all of those things do affect the grip of the race car.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a huge difference from pavement. All the drivers go out on a track walk, and, the track never really changes when you're on a regular road course, but every year you come to a street circuit, something's different. The walls are slightly different. There's potholes in new places and obviously concrete. And, it's just so different from corner to corner. And for the rookies, that's where it's going to be really hard to figure it out in such a short amount of time. The guys, the veterans have been here every year. If there's something new, it's just one thing that they have to look out for. But for the rookies going out there, trying to get as many laps as possible and figure it all out. But, yeah, for sure, the Firestones, I think something we found even in Indy Lights throughout the year, is the first session. We've seen almost no cars on track right now, but the first session with no rubber, especially with no Firestone rubber, we've had some of the junior categories racing here this weekend already, but yeah, the green track with no Firestone rubber is really slippery, and we've seen a lot of guys caught out with it, especially the younger guys in Indy Next. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see in this session. But yeah, I mean, it's so treacherous, and it's a game of chicken. Everyone's waiting for the rookies to go out and clean the track off and put some of that Firestone rubber down.
I have always felt like that over the years when we've been in Toronto that, you know, turn 3 is tricky enough, but you're going from asphalt across, as we said, some lane marking, some crosswalks marking, and then to driver's right on the inside, there is a concrete patch, and then you transition right back to asphalt, and we have seen some wheel slip through that area.
Yeah, and it's also uphill.
That's right.
It's really hard to tell on the camera angle sometimes, but it's a really steep incline. And the grippiest part of the track is the dark surface on turn-in, but you hit concrete immediately on the apex, and that's where apex is really slippery. So yeah, you're trying to get the car turned as much as you can, and basically you're trying to straight line it up the hill, because wheel spin is a massive issue there.
Talk about that. We've talked about that being the primary passing zone. We've also seen sometimes it's not a good idea, but they attempt it anyway. You make that haul up the straightaway toward turn number 1. That has turned into a fairly decent passing zone over the last few years too.
Yeah, I think that's also a passing zone that just gets generated out of mistakes. You know, obviously it's super bumpy down that straight. You know, it hasn't really been a passing zone in previous years, but for sure now when you come out of that last corner, the car's loaded, it's bouncing. We've seen some, you know, obviously big accidents there over the years, and it's just really tricky. So I think, you know, that's a little bit more of a passing opportunity when drivers are in the air or, you know, on older tires and making mistakes. But yeah, for sure the biggest passing zone is down the back straight into that turn 3, and that's where usually a lot of all the action we're seeing is.
Well, we know that a lot of folks, I posted a little bit earlier today on social media, a lot of folks very, very happy to learn that you would be with us this weekend. You still got a tremendous fan base, and understandably so, with the generations of your family and the success that your family has had in various forms of motorsports throughout the world. So for those that might not be aware of what you've been up to of late, give us an update on that while we have an opportunity for you to do so.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I mean, it's kind words there, but yeah, no, I've been racing in IMSA, and actually some against some of these guys that are having their rookie runs this weekend. Hunter, McElrea, we raced together in LMP2. Toby Sowery is another one that we're competitors in LMP2 and IMSA, and yeah, I've been racing IMSA, Super Trucks, a little bit of Trans Am, and also driver coaching and driving the 2-seater INDYCAR. So I'm around. I'm always in the paddocks, and I've been really busy this year, and it's been great. But yeah, no, I've had a great time racing sports cars. Obviously, would love to be joining my friends here this weekend on the INDYCAR track, but it's really cool to see those guys getting a shot. You know, especially Toby and Hunter. I was teammates with Hunter in Indy Next a couple of years ago. And I mean, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's usually such a big jump, but you know, the LMP2 has such a strong field, and a lot of the INDYCAR guys we actually end up racing against. You know, I race against Felix, Pato, and Scott McLaughlin all at Daytona, and you know, it's not the first time that Toby and Hunter are mixing up with these guys, and it's not the first time they're doing pit stops. So I think I'm expecting big things from these rookies that I race with.
Speaking of Hunter McElrea, the current IMSA endurance driver and Indy Next by Firestone alumni, Hunter McElrea making his NTT IndyCar Series debut this weekend. You heard Matt talk about it for Dale Coyne. He finished runner-up in the 2023 Indy Next by Firestone Championship. He turned his first laps aboard an IndyCar during a successful one-day test recently with the team at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. A little bit earlier today, our Alex Wolf caught up with Hunter McElrea.
Well, a driver very excited to be making his NTT IndyCar Series debut for Dale Coyne Racing is Hunter McElrea. And Hunter, I'm not going to ask you sort of your emotions. I know very excited to make this debut, but just to talk to us about the work that's gone in to you being able to make this debut in the NTT IndyCar Series.
Yeah, it's awesome, mate. It's been a long time coming. You know, for me this year it's been really difficult, probably more than I thought, to get an opportunity. So to finally get the challenge just to get in one. Obviously I tested a couple of weeks ago, so that was super special, and then obviously to be in the race, it's really cool. So it's going to be a big ask, obviously a big challenge, kind of throwing myself in the deep end, but I'm going to enjoy it. I have kind of no expectations, just going to do the best I can, and we'll see. I mean, hopefully we can make a statement the best I can, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to enjoy it and kind of have no pressure and have fun.
Now, you're somebody that can make a true sort of apples-to-apples comparison. We talked so much about the Indy Next by Firestone cars and similarities, differences to the IndyCar. Having that first drive a couple weeks back at Mid-Ohio Sports Car course, were there things that you were able to translate from your experiences in Indy Next over to the IndyCar?
Yeah, I think the Indy Next car is a good car in terms of, like, it's a lot harder to drive. I mean, the IndyCar's faster and more physical, but like the damping in the IndyCar and just a lot of the braking, the gear shift, like the downshifts, a lot of things are nicer as you'd expect in IndyCar. You know, not being negative about the Indy Next car, but it's just, you know, if you can drive the Indy Next car quick, I think you could drive the IndyCar quick. So, yeah, I loved it. It felt pretty natural, pretty quick. I'd even been out of it single-seater for like almost a year. You know, last time I drove was when I won my last Indy Lights weekend at Laguna with Andretti, and then I've been racing in LMP2 and IMSA in the endurance races, staying race fit. And then, yeah, I had an IndyCar test, and yeah, it went pretty well, and it felt pretty natural. So kudos to everyone at Indy Next, and obviously IndyCar.
And of course, to add to the, I guess, the drinking from a fire hose type aspect, you have the hybrids in the Indy cars. Were you able to get some experience with that at Mid-Ohio? And if so, what do you think about that as you go to the streets of Toronto this weekend?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I had some experience running with that. So it's busy at first, but I think once you get used to it, it kind of becomes a bit of a habit. So, yeah, it's obviously maybe a good time for me. It changes things up for sure, I think, with maybe the more uncertainty and new things with IndyCar, for me, jump in the better, just to kind of maybe level the playing field a bit. But anyway, it's nice to be here, and the hybrid system was honestly pretty easy to work. So I thought IndyCar did a good job with it.
Now, as we look ahead, finish this sentence for me. A successful weekend in the Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto for Hunter McElrea is?
I would say experience gain, experience under the belt. Leaving here with a good weekend, lots to learn, clean weekend, and, you know, this time, I know this is supposed to be a one-word answer, but to try and maybe put myself in a position to be back here again.
Well, congratulations on this opportunity, and wish you a lot of luck this weekend.
Thank you, sir.
And again, those are the words of Hunter McElrea talking with our Alex Wolf earlier today. Happy to have David Ladd with us throughout the course of this session as well. And David, we noticed that some experience on the pit box for Hunter McElrea this weekend.
Yeah, it was interesting. We see Billy Vincent on the pit box, and he had previously been working with Meyer Shank Racing, specifically Helio Castroneves at the Indianapolis 500, and he's been in their pit boxes throughout this year, off and on. And it's interesting to see him on a Dale Coyne box wearing his MPG polo from his go-kart days. So it's kind of interesting to see Billy Vincent up there helping out Hunter. That's definitely going to be a big.
I thought he was retired. I thought Billy
he keeps
said
saying
he was
that.
going to step in. Matt Brabham, you can speak to this. For all of us, it's kind of like a sickness. I mean, it gets into your veins, and you just can't quite get it out of your system, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. My parents call it disease. It's a bad disease. It's nothing positive. But no, I mean, obviously, it's those guys are buddies with Hunter, and I think obviously Hunter's trying to get as many people around him to make him feel comfortable. I think he's definitely one of those drivers, and I know him quite well. He's all or nothing. So anyone to kind of calm him down and ease his nerves and you know, get him through a weekend like this clean is going to be helpful.
Now, there was a bit of a wait-and-see period after they did the initial install lap, and of course, you know, the way the tires are staggered throughout the course of a weekend, Matt, you know, those that are rookies get an extra set for essentially for this practice session. And normally when the session starts out to be an hour and 15 minutes, you see just a handful of those rookies out on the course. But here we are, you know, 8 minutes, 10 minutes into this session, and we've already seen 11 takers. So a fair amount of the field going out turning laps in this session.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, obviously, as I said, it's a game of chicken. Everyone's worried to go out and be the first car on track. But once the first kind of cars go out there and, you know, things get underway, the team managers and the strategists feel a little bit more obliged to send them out. But, no, I think, you know, even though there's, you know, a long session and we got to practice tomorrow, it's still not a lot of time. And, you know, there's new things going on in IndyCar, especially with the hybrid system. So, you know, I'm sure the teams have heaps of test items to go through, and even if it's just running around at a slow pace and looking after your tires for the weekend, if you're not a rookie, just to go through some of those systems and adjust them is going to be beneficial. And obviously not a lot of testing this year with all the delays and different things happening on in the background. So I mean, I think we're seeing track time being used here. Maybe not for fast laps. I know there's quite a lot of slow times out there, but for just going through some of the systems checks.
It's interesting to note how this hybrid, since the unveiling at Mid-Ohio, I mean, you had a course at Mid-Ohio where many speculated that the best place to use that extra boost would be coming off the hairpin. And then when you went through 4, 5, and 6 and into the S's, that's where you would be going slower. It would give you an opportunity to regenerate itself. And the challenge was at Iowa, once you used it, it was going to take you a while to regenerate it.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I think it's one of those things where all the teams have kind of approached it from different angles, and obviously there's all these mathematicians on teams. I know even in Indy Next we have push to pass, and there's a whole system and mathematical program that tells you where it's supposed to be the most beneficial. But yeah, something that I learned, especially as a driver, is that if everyone's doing the same thing, there's no benefit, especially to the passing side of things. So, something that I was coaching as kids, as the younger kids coming up, and that I would do personally is you'd almost end up using it in places that no one would think you would use it.
Yeah.
And I found that almost to be the most beneficial way to use it. So, I mean, I think the experienced guys and people that have been used to those kind of systems, especially even the sports car racing guys that cross over, have used those things and kind of understand how they work. But there's definitely like a power struggle between the drivers and where they want to use it, and the engineers have the whole thing mapped out, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday when they're in the offices, back at the team headquarters, figuring out the best mathematical place to use it for lap times.
So in that regard, it makes it vastly different than the push to pass that we were used to before the hybrid, correct?
I think so, but I think it depends, because a lot of that was also used for in and out laps with pit stop sequences. So I mean, I'm not sure exactly. I think all the teams are kind of different in their approach, but this seems a little bit more quick and reactive than in the past, as opposed to just having like the whole whenever you wanted it, basically.
We want to stay with that Dale Coyne stable, and some good news, David Land, that after his performance at Mid-Ohio, which we think kind of the story of the weekend, despite the fact the hybrid was unveiled, how about the job Toby Sowery did at Mid-Ohio, and he's back in the car now for next two road and street course races.
Well, I thought it was absolutely unbelievable what Toby Sowery was able to do, but I mean, I'm sure as Matt would know, I mean, Toby's been one of those guys who's been in the Indy Next Series, previously Indy Lights, for years and years, and has just overperformed in underperforming equipment. And he finally got his shot at IndyCars, and he absolutely did a fantastic job. I mean, you think about how the struggles and the difficulties Dale Coyne Racing has had this year for performance, and yet for Sowery to come out under those circumstances, having never driven a hybrid car before, having never driven an Indy car in race conditions, having like 2 test days, I mean, he had everything working against him, and to do as well as he did was just incredibly impressive to me. And so from my perspective, that is 2 extra races absolutely well earned for Toby Sowery, who currently is 9th on the board, so he's still proving it.
And Matthew, you know that Mid-Ohio is not the easiest place in the world to pass, and he moved from 24th to finish 13th in that race.
Yeah, it was a great job. I mean, as I said, for people looking in who don't know or don't follow the careers, obviously I know all these guys. I mean, I wasn't surprised. I mean, when you have someone like him, it reminds me a lot of myself, where you're driving anything that you can drive. You don't have the budget to do all the testing and be with all the best teams. But when you have a driver that is in that mindset, it just prevails above, other drivers that just kind of get the free ticket in from other circumstances, let's just say. But no, he's hungry. I mean, he's driving for his career. He only gets probably one shot, just like I did or other people get, and I think there's a few other factors that played into it. I mean, as I said, we all race LMP2 together in sports cars, so he's used to racing against Pato and Felix and these guys that come over, and he's also used to pit stops. And I think that's one of the biggest things that was a benefit to him at Mid-Ohio, was being able to play those strategies and do clean pit stops. As a rookie, you come in, the driving is almost easy. We heard Hunter talking about it. There's a lot of things going on in the car that you just have to get used to, and that comes down to muscle memory, and I think that's the hardest challenge that rookies face, is not always the speed and the pace, but it's getting through the strategies and the full race and the pit stops cleanly, because that's all brand new to a lot of drivers. So luckily he's had some experience with that this year, racing sports cars, and I think that's tremendously helped him. And then the other factor too is that Mid-Ohio is a physical track. It's one of the most physical tracks on the calendar he was not slowing down in the end, so he's definitely physically ready.
27 minutes now remaining in this session, just under that, and 22 of the 27 drivers have turned laps. Will Power has gone to P1 with the time of 62.698. Graham Rahal second fastest, then Lundgaard, Malukas, and BK. Hunter McElrea sixth fastest. Rosenqvist jumps in there now, then McElrea, Siegel, Rasmussen, Canapino, Armstrong, Sowery 12th fastest, then Grosjean, Lundqvist, O'Ward, and Fittipaldi through 16th. Stingray Rob, Simpson, Ericsson, Ferrucci, Kirkwood, and Alex Palou. Again, 22 of the 27 cars have turned laps. An update for the pits with Alex Wolff.
And Christian Lundgaard, who won from the pole last year here in Toronto for his first career IndyCar Series victory. He has come into the attention of the Hy-Vee Honda crew for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. They have the front cover off right now, got the wrenches out, making some adjustments in the area of the front suspension, the front dampers. They're right now preparing to take the engine cover off the rear of the car to give that a once-over. And they're also paying a lot of attention to the under tray, especially on the left side, one of the crew members laying down and was shielding his eyes from the sun to try to get a good look at that under tray and to see, like Matt was talking about, with the bumps around this track, to see as far as a ride height and how it's doing over those. So the work continues for the 45 car. They'll try to go out and improve on their time shortly.
Yeah, that's the challenge for these teams, and I think that's Matt Brabham, one of the things that makes a champion of this series a true champion. You go from a couple of silky smooth repaves like Mid-Ohio and Iowa back to the bumpy streets of Toronto. There's a lot of work to be done to get the setup of these cars just right.
Yeah, it's a whole different setup and a whole different ball game, especially from the last couple of tracks we're racing on. And, that's why we see different names towards the front. I mean, Lundgaard is one that comes to mind. He's a very talented driver, and I don't know what it is. Maybe he just likes the bumps or is used to it. But usually for those European guys that come over, it's a little bit of an eye-opening experience. But no, he's taken to it like water, and he's looking good. I mean, obviously he's quick. He went out there and was one of the fastest cars, and it's going to be a strong weekend for him, I think.
And it looks like we've got an issue for Marcus Ericsson, Matt. There's a lot of smoke coming out of the right side of that race car.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it is. Oh, we got fire as well, so it could be something to do with the hybrid system here, or a turbo on the right side of the car. It still has power, but he's just kind of limping that thing around.
So an issue for the car of Marcus Ericsson. It is, he aptly put it, Matthew Brabham did. Marcus Ericsson is limping that thing around the racetrack. And boy, big plumes of smoke, David Land, continue to come out of the rear of that race car.
Yeah, that's not the good kind of smoke for sure. There's usually not good smoke coming out of a race car, that's for sure, unless you're doing burnouts, but that's a significant amount of smoke. Looks very similar to some of the Honda failures we saw at the Indianapolis 500. I think back to Marcus Armstrong, just that smoke coming out of one bank, one side of the race car. So while we don't want to totally speculate until we know for sure, definitely doesn't look good for Marcus Ericsson.
The good news is he was able to get that thing back around to pit box, and so no caution as of yet, so it doesn't look like any fluid was laid down. So Alex Wolff will head that way and hopefully have an update for us momentarily. Speaking of Alex Wolff, earlier today he caught up with Toby Sowery back in the car at Toronto and in for one more race in Portland for Dale Coyne Racing.
Well, making his second start in the NTT IndyCar Series this weekend, Toby Sowery driving for Dale Coyne Racing. And Toby, a great run, really, I guess, the hard charger, if you will, one of those at Mid-Ohio. Sort of assess your weekend top to bottom there, and as you look ahead here this weekend.
Honestly, perfect weekend in terms of result. It's unfortunate we didn't get the qualifying attempt, so I'm still yet to do that this weekend and kind of understand how that works. But in terms of the race, couldn't really ask for much more. One little mistake here and there, but in terms of the actual overall performance on my side, I'm quite happy. It's no small task. It's pretty much the pinnacle of single-seater racing. So to jump in and kind of swim, I'm very happy with myself. And Dale and everyone within the team has done incredible to kind of turn it around from lots of drivers in and out to actually a strong, solid performance. And they're working super hard, to keep that consistency, to keep that improvement, and build on it.
And certainly they were happy, not only the opportunity here in Toronto, but in Portland. And so what does that do for your confidence, that sort of their assessment matched yours of how the weekend went? They get rewarded with a couple more chances.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a chemistry thing as well. We got on very well. The performance matched. And I think it goes to show that, you know, put the right people together and the performance can come. I mean, yeah, like, for sure, it's definitely more of a foundation that we can build on, having 2 more races at the weekend. But, yeah, you know, like, I'm excited. It's, you know, more races in INDYCAR. Can never complain at that. But, yeah, it's going back to 2 tracks that I've driven before as well. So having that 1 race experience under the belt kind of gives you a bit of a platform to be a bit more exploratory with how you approach the weekend, how you take sessions on, and just try and really figure out what works and what doesn't.
And of course, as you're somebody that's been trying for quite a while to make it here to the INDYCAR series, maybe a talk about that a little bit, that it's not necessarily a deal where it's entirely about your talent behind the wheel, but there's a lot of other things that have to go right in offices and boardrooms, if you will.
Yeah, like you said, it's not just driving. There's so much more to this sport than people understand most of the time. So it's been a target for a very long time, and obviously Dale has been the guy that's given us all the chance. So very grateful for that. But again, like you said, there's a lot of networking, a lot of sponsorship proposals, a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears that go on outside of the racing to get this opportunity. So it's doing all of that, putting all that effort, and then making sure when you turn up to the race weekend that it kind of clicks and it's not a wasted opportunity.
Now, as we look ahead this weekend to try to build upon what you did a couple weeks back in Mid-Ohio, what's the goals for this weekend in Toronto?
P30 and upwards, I guess. It's building on what we did, so if we can improve the result, fantastic. It's going to be a different challenge, street course, much bumpier. Not sure how physicality-wise it's going to play in, but yeah, throw in the deep end, swim again, and hopefully beat our previous result.
We'll look forward to seeing what you can do, and we wish you a lot of luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that answer. But what's the expectation level? Well, upwards from P13, which would be an improvement upon Mid-Ohio. And while we were enjoying that conversation between Alex Wolff and Toby Sowery, Alex Palou has gone to P1. Rosenqvist is right behind him. Then Kirkwood, Award, and Power. Dixon, McLaughlin, Armstrong, Rahal, and Malukas. The fast lap so far now at 62.331. So speeds continue to climb. And all 27 cars now have turned laps here at Toronto. And Matthew Brabham joining us today and tomorrow. Davey Hamilton will be with us on Sunday. Matthew, we've had an opportunity to take a look via our multi-screen monitor at the crew working on the car of Marcus Ericsson. Interesting to see fluid of some point coming out of both the front and rear of that race car.
Yeah, super unusual to see fluid coming out of the front of the car. I know there was a few jokes there, coming out around the cockpit there. But no, I mean, I think it looks bad. I mean, when you got fluid coming out of the front of the race car, especially on an open wheel car, I mean, the engine's in the back of the car. So there's obviously something really wrong, and it's flowing all through the bottom of the floor pan. Could be something to do with bumps. Obviously, lines run underneath the car. I've seen problems with lines being pinched underneath the car, going over bumps, bottoming out. But not looking good for him.
And it looks like his session, for all intents and purposes, may be over, and maybe Alex can get his thoughts and impressions, find out exactly what happened. But that really puts a team behind the 8-ball, Matt, when you've got a checklist you're looking to work through, and something totally out of your control ends your session this early on the first day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously it puts his whole team behind. The lucky thing for him is he's got some good teammates that are going to take a share of the workload. So, he could come out, even miss the next practice. I think he'll still be strong in qualifying as opposed to some of the other guys, or, with compared to teams that don't have quite the resources as Andretti does. But, no, not a good start for him. I mean, he's just going to miss track time. He's going to be behind the 8-ball. And, you just miss out on setup changes that you would have made. And it's something that you always say, if I had just made these few little tweaks during the race weekend, I would have made all the difference. And, yeah, he's going to miss out on that. So, big disadvantage.
And David Land is often the case. There's a feeling out process oftentimes when a driver transitions to a new team. First quarter of the season did not go at all well for them. He wanted to hit the reset button starting in Detroit. I think for all intents and purposes, he's done that. Again, it's not been a smooth process even since Detroit, but you get an idea that, at least if you can't control things that are, mechanical, that are out of your control, but it does look like he's developing some level of comfort with his new race team.
Well, for sure. Yeah, when things go well, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, to your point, Mark, I mean, I was just thinking about this before you mentioned it, is that Indianapolis crashes in practice, loses track time, has to qualify by the skin of his teeth into the race. Iowa crashes in practice on the back foot. Now at Toronto, you have a mechanical failure, which takes you out of the first practice session for all intents and purposes. It's very hard to get that synergy when you don't have track time with your team. I mean, and to Matt's point, yes, he has got some great teammates. Colton Herta and Kyle Kirkwood definitely know how to get around the street courses. But, you know, the rhythm and the synergy are just not there right now for Marcus Ericsson. And, you know, some of it's his fault and some of it's not. This definitely not his fault. It's tough.
Well, in terms of the schedule, Matt Brabham, it's been pretty hefty since going all the way back to April 21st at the streets of Long Beach. I mean, there was an off weekend, the weekend of May 3rd. But you get to the month of May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then you go through a busy month of June, and even when you have an off weekend, you're testing somewhere. Then you get to July, you go from Mid-Ohio to a doubleheader at Iowa Speedway, and then July, you know, this weekend we're on the streets of Toronto. Now you get a break for the Olympics, and as we see, Will Power has spun on the course and come to a stop. That may very well bring out a red flag condition if he can't get that car restarted. We'll keep an eye on that. But so Matthew, from a driver's perspective, I know you guys want to race and you want to stay in rhythm, but I would imagine some of these teams and some of these drivers are going to be happy to have a bit of a break.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the drivers love racing, and obviously for a driver, you know, the more you're in a car, the better you feel and the more comfortable you feel. But certainly for the crew guys, and, you know, to David's point there with Marcus and that car, you know, when you have incidents like that, knock-on effects happen, and, you know, he's had incidents in practices and races, and it just all, it wears the guys out. You know, if you have a team that's working all night and all day to repair the car, you know, that's when mistakes happen, and, you know, who knows what was going on with Marcus Ericsson's car there. But, you know, to me, if I was a team manager or looking in from the out, you know, from a manager perspective, it would be not surprising to me if, you know, it's just a knock-on effect from whatever happened to Iowa or previous races that are now showing signs or problems. So for the crew guys, I mean, yeah, I feel for those guys. I mean, traveling and obviously coming internationally here into Canada, and, you know, sometimes that can cause issues with the trucks. And, I mean, these guys are working flat out, and it's a tough job. And, you know, especially for the crew guys, the engineers, you know, they don't really get any breaks. The drivers can, you know, have a little bit of a break on Monday, Tuesday. You know, it's not like they're working on the car and prepping them. But, yeah, for the crew guys, prepping cars Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then throwing them on a truck and going straight for a race weekend. And, you know, if something happens during the race weekend, they're not getting any sleep.
14 minutes remaining in this initial session, then a couple of 10-minute sessions to follow. And when we do get back to action, the 17th of August, David Land, the championship chase will resume. Be interesting to see what impact this weekend will have on that. As it stands right now, Alex Palou leads Will Power by 35, Pato O'Ward by 52, Scott Dixon by 57, Scott McLaughlin by 65. I think you can say Colton Herta is still somewhat in the mix, as one of the Hukos Hollinger cars has spun as well. That looks like Augustin Canapino. Power was able to get back underway, by the way. But I think once you get back to 7th place, Kirkwood 105, Rossy 114, Newgarden 113, Santino, Ferrucci a little further back than that. I think it's those top 6 or 7 are really the ones that are mathematically and still can feel like they have a shot at the time.
Yes, and something I think we really need to talk about when we're talking about the championship is, I just want to give a shout out real quick to IndyCar. We've seen 2 cars spin out, and the hybrid assist has worked to get them both back going. Oh, yeah, that's the replay. The thing about the championship is, Mark, that I think is really important that we need to think about is that it is predominantly ovals. So we got to look at those guys who are maybe better on ovals. So I look at the championship and I say, okay, well, a Will Power, I think, is going to gain points when guys like Alex Palou, I think that's why he was so disappointed, especially at Iowa when he crashed out of the race, because he knew that was going to be one of his worst races, and he was running up at the front. He was going to have a good points day, and he didn't. I mean, for guys like Alex Palou, you're going to have to save points. You're going to have to protect points. And some guys are going to be able to go on the offensive on the ovals. And I think once we get over the summer break and we head to Gateway, I think that's going to be one of the really exciting things championship-wise to look at. And if you look at the championship perspective for Toronto, guys like Alex Palou, guys like Felix Rosenqvist, guys like Scott McLaughlin, guys like Kyle Kirkwood, who are running up front right now are looking to gain, this is one of their last opportunities to really gain a lot of points in the championship over some of those guys who maybe prefer the ovals.
So, Matty, twice now in the last 5 minutes or so, we've seen a couple of drivers have issues in that area around 9 and 10, and it looked like that for whatever the reason, the rear grip of that car just went away.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of spins here. It looks like the drivers are starting to get to that time of the session where it's time to really find the limit here, push the brake zones. You can see the rubber down on the track now. There's a lot of dark lines, and we call them 11s, coming out of a lot of the corners, and it just keeps getting faster and faster. And now is the time to push and figure out where the grip is, where the limits are, and we've seen a couple of drivers do that. But one thing that I've never seen and is surprising to me is we saw Canapino spin and put the car in reverse and reverse backwards down the track under his own power, which is it's not something you see every day in IndyCar.
Let's go to Alex Wolf.
Marcus Ericsson had a chance to debrief with the team on what seemed to be the issue with the 28 car.
Something engine related. Obviously, everyone can see the smoke there, and I just felt like something broke, so they have to go back and see if it's a change of engine or if they can repair it. But end of session for us, unfortunately.
Was it a sudden issue, or was it something you could feel slowly coming on?
No, it was sudden. It was feeling okay, and then it just said like snap, and then it was broke. So it's a shame. We have a really strong street course package, and I really like street courses, so this puts it on the back foot, but we just have to regroup and come back stronger tomorrow.
I know it happened pretty early in the session. Were you able to get any kind of a lapse, and if so, how'd the car and the track feel?
I was just starting to get up to speed and get tires up to temperature, so it was still early, but initial feeling was really good, so that's promising for tomorrow.
Well, we appreciate your time. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
He might be one of the nicest, most optimistic drivers, Matt Brabham, that we've ever had in this series. There's just absolutely nothing to not like about Marcus Ericsson.
Yeah, no, he seems pretty relaxed and still ready to go for the weekend. But interesting comments there that he just felt something break, and we saw a lot of fluid there on the bottom of the car. Like it sounds like obviously it was driver talk there, not giving away too much. Not trying to blame anyone really, but it was super nice about him. And there's definitely other drivers that would come in from that a lot more heated. And he seems cool, calm, and collected, and he's always been like that.
Calms your nerves a bit, David Land, when you're an Indy 500 champion. I think there's less things to worry about in life.
Yeah, there's a lot less stress. There's a lot less stress. You've won the big one. You've got nothing left to prove if you're Marcus Ericsson. But certainly, to Matt's point, it's tough. I said that earlier. It's a shame for Marcus Ericsson because you can hear it in his voice, right? He's so disappointed that he didn't get off to a good start because we know those the Andretti Global cars are so strong on the street courses, and Marcus is so strong on the street courses. That Indy 500 win has overshadowed the fact that all of his wins before that were coming on street courses. So for Marcus, and again, he's another one of those drivers I think that would really like to gain points this weekend, and that's definitely not a way to start. You got 26 other guys out there right now cranking off the laps, learning more about the race car, and Marcus is sitting on the sidelines.
Matt Brabham, Davey Hamilton, and I have talked about over the last year or so the upward tick at AJ Foyt Racing, and a lot of that driven, first of all, by their technical alliance with Penske. But let's face it, it appears as though that everyone at Foyt Racing and their driver Santino Ferrucci getting along swimmingly. And if you look down at the driver points and the entrant points, you see something you haven't seen in a long, long time, and that's an AJ Foyt machine in the top 10 in points.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. Obviously, he's controversial. He's stirring the pot a little bit, but no, it's been exciting to watch, regardless of what you think of him. He's definitely an exciting driver to watch, and when you have entertainment like that, it just makes it more fun, especially for me watching in from the outside. I need a lot of motivation to get over my own personal grievances of not being out there myself, and seeing guys like that have a crack and do what he's done in a car like that has been great. And I think a lot of that is also come from the engineering side of things. He's always been really good on the speedways, and I think that all kind of comes from Michael Cannon, who's his engineer, and was famously, obviously, Scott Dixon's engineer when he won a lot of championships at Ganassi. So no, he's got some good guys around him there, and it seems to be making a huge difference on that, especially on his AJ Foyt car.
Well, I've asked Davey to speak to this, and I'm going to have you weigh in on it as well. You know, and I'm talking about, you know, I've likened the relationship between, you know, your lead engineer and even your race strategist and your driver. I liken that to the relationship that a quarterback has in football with the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and the head coach. I mean, that relationship is as much about chemistry as any. You guys have to be on the same page and speak the same language.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most important thing. There's almost like a holy trinity of what makes a car go fast, and you can almost put it down to those three things and exclude everything else. You know, if you have those three things in line, it works out great, and that's where the speed comes from. That's the driver, obviously, the engineer, and then I think the team and the dampers. And to me, that's, if you have those three things, you're on recipes for success, and nothing else almost matters. Obviously, pit stops and crew play a part, but in terms of the overall speed, I mean, that's really what makes these cars fast. And obviously, nothing like Formula One, where all the teams have different cars. It's other than that, and obviously the engine, it's quite similar. So if you can maximize those three things between the driver, the engineer, and the dampers, I mean, you're on your way. And he's definitely proved that this year. They've got a good chemistry going on there. They've got the holy trinity, as I would call it, and they're getting results from it.
5.5-minute mark of this initial session. Again, a couple of 10-minute sessions coming up in which the field will be split in half, and that's when we expect to see them slap on those alternates and give them a whack and find out how they'll stack those up when it comes to qualifying during the day tomorrow afternoon. We can't tell you Alexander Rossy is the latest to go to P1. A tick faster than Alex Palou. Palou was at a 62.331. Rossy is at a 62.275. Felix Rosenqvist is still third, then Herta and Dixon the top 5. McLaughlin, VK, Kirkwood, Power, and Award the top 10. Newgarden 11th, Ray Hall 12th, Armstrong 13th, David Maluka is 14th. Christian Lundgaard is 15th, then Christian Rasmussen back in the car this weekend for Ed Carpenter. Augustin Canapino 17th, and Roman Grosjean, Santino Ferrucci. Hunter McElrea in the 18 this weekend. Marcus Ericsson, we mentioned his session is over. An engine-related issue ended his session. He was 21st fastest. 22nd, Nolan Siegel. 23rd, Toby Sowery. Back in the 51 for Dale Coyne. 24th, Linus Lundqvist. Stingray Rob, 25th. Pietro Fittipaldi 26th, and Kiffin Simpson is currently 27th. Talk about Alexander Rossy, P1. David Land, a very strange set of circumstances and a very frightening crash to close out race number 2 at Iowa, and he was involved in that.
Yeah, that was I was an eyewitness to that one. That was one of the wildest ones I've seen in a long time. Alexander Rossy was low on fuel. Kind of similar, actually, to a crash that we saw years and years ago with Ryan Hunter-Reay and Mike Conway at the Indianapolis 500, where you have a driver trying to stretch it on the fuel, and he didn't quite make it. When he ran out of fuel coming out of turn number 2, Stingray Rob had nowhere to go. I mean, when you run out of fuel in an IndyCar, and I'm sure Matt Brabham can speak to this, it's like hitting the brakes. You're just slowing down so quickly that there was no way for Stingray Rob, completely unsighted, to avoid him. And then Stingray went for a wild ride, was transported for observation, thankfully released, and is out running right now in the 26th spot here in practice. But a very wild accident. But I think the key is, and the most important thing, for such a violent accident, it was fantastic to see, and I got to give a shout out to INDYCAR and Dallara for putting together such a safe race car that when you see violence like that, it's amazing to see a driver walk away from it.
And earlier today, before the session, our Alex Wolff caught up with Stingray Rob.
Well, certainly one driver that we're very happy to see here in Toronto is Stingray Rob after that scary crash at the finish last Sunday in Iowa. And Stingray, I guess first things first, what's sort of your recollections of what happened on the backstretch?
Well, I remember everything, unfortunately. I'd like to forget it, but it's in my memory forever now. But mentally, I'm doing well. I think having that knowledge of how we got to that point, understanding what happened when I came down off the airline ride I was on there, and the safety of the car, I mean, really blew my mind a little bit, because I should be hurt a lot more than what I am. I mean, burning my finger getting out of the car has been the extent of my injuries, maybe a couple of bruises here and there, but walking away without a concussion, without any severe injuries, unbelievable. So I feel very blessed and very grateful that I get to jump back in the car this weekend.
And, of course, you talk about the safety of the car, but also almost about the time it came to rest, the MIR IndyCar safety team was there, and just talk about how that eases your mind after a terrifying situation like that to have knowledgeable people there almost immediately.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I think, still moving when the first guy was, like, next to me in the car. But, you know, that was very comforting just because I'm sitting there, I'm upside down, I'm out of breath because I got the wind knocked out of me. I don't know if the car's on fire. I don't know if the car's broken in half. I don't know what I'm doing here. And they're sitting there asking me questions like, okay, Stingray, are you all right? Can you breathe? And I always probably should take a second to answer that a little bit better. I was a little bit frustrated with the situation. I said, of course I can't breathe. Did you see what I just went through? I got the wind knocked out of me. But yeah, having them right there as soon as they were is very comforting. And it's definitely something that I think people underestimate is the people behind the scenes that are keeping us safe, and they did their job that day.
And certainly the process we saw a couple of days ago, of course, cleared to drive. And for the fans out there, what's that sort of a process like of reevaluating you to make sure that you're as safe and ready to go this weekend?
Well, first thing was I got life flighted out to the local hospital to get a CT scan, make sure there was no bleeding internally of any sort, and just make sure that me saying that I was okay was actually the truth. And then the next day on Monday, as we were coming back from Iowa, stopped in at the INDYCAR Medical Center in Speedway, and they went through all the concussion protocol. Initial tests were our neurologist doing some just regular hand-eye coordination stuff to make sure that my eyes weren't lagging behind, which is a good sign of a concussion usually. And then checking my emotions, checking my balance, all that stuff. And then we have all of this stuff that we've practiced in preseason to set a baseline for, which is very trackable now during the season that I was able to test through.
And now, of course, as we move on from that to what you really like to talk about, driving that number 41 car for AJ Foyt Racing. What do you think's the outlook as you come here for a second time at the INDYCAR Series at the streets of Toronto?
I'm very excited. You know, I think this track favors those that have experience here. It's a very dynamic, bumpy, unique racetrack that I don't think you can ever get a perfect car for. So having that knowledge going into a second season is good. And then I think that we've been building momentum. You know, race 1 at Iowa, it was my best finish of the year, and that's just progress that we've been making the last few races. So I'm hopeful that that continues here. I know that last weekend we may have had a little bit of a bumper in that momentum, but I'm hoping that that's not the case and we get right back to business.
Well, Stingray, again, it's great to see you and wish you a good and, most importantly, a safe weekend here in Toronto.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And happy to see you back in the race car this weekend after a scary crash for sure. Stingray Rob, and the checkered flag flies on this initial session, and then we'll divide the teams into two groups. And we saw Colton Herta slow at the entrance to turn number 3 a couple of minutes ago, and then he got back on the giddy-up, if you will, and went to P1, but that was only momentarily because after he laid down a time of 62.219, Alex Palou went a tick faster at 62.080. So here's how they align. Now Herta at the very end of the session, Matt Brabham, he decides he's going to go back to P1 at a 61.891, and those are all the primaries.
Yeah, they're trading fastest laps here, and yeah, as I said, I haven't seen any alternate tires yet. I think the guys are saving them maybe for this next little session or maybe tomorrow. But yeah, Herta and Palou, when you watch the in-car cameras, their hands, it looks like they're milking a cow. I mean, there's so much violence. David Lamb was using the word violence before. There's so much violence going on inside the cockpit over the bumps. And, you know, when you watch Palou early in the session, he was leaving black lines after every corner. Herta, you know, on the onboard is just being thrown around inside the car. The bumps are crazy. I mean, I think it's just whoever is brave enough to really to throw it down here at the end of this session. And it looks like you can see visually those guys are driving harder and pushing harder than everyone else.
About a 5-minute break here before we get to group number 1 in that first 10-minute session. So a couple of more sessions for the NTT IndyCar Series. And Matt, over the last several years that you've been involved in the series at various levels, including the road to Indy, you've pretty much had a front row seat in terms of the innovations and safety and how much safer these cars are, and want to give you the opportunity to kind of echo the sentiments of Stingray Rob. The level of trust and appreciation is almost indescribable that you as drivers have for the AMR IndyCar safety crew and all the safety innovations that the NTT IndyCar Series has been in the forefront on. You guys are all, again, gals, are all very appreciative of all of those developments over the last 10 years especially. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think it's the safety team is the best in the world. I mean, you don't see anywhere else in any other series. Obviously I'm racing a different series at the moment, and they're not as quick to the scene as these guys are in IndyCar. And it's just getting safer and safer. Obviously, I grew up in an era listening to my grandfather's stories and even my dad's, when they had no pit lane speed limit, and obviously the race cars were a lot more dangerous, and they were losing a lot more people back then, and people getting hurt. So, it's good to see that these drivers are safe. And, when a driver feels safe, they're inclined to push harder and throw it down the inside and not have as much worry about their fellow competitors, which I think, obviously is obviously always a factor, but it provides better racing as well.
I want to go back and recap the doubleheader weekend at Iowa Speedway. It was a good weekend for Team Penske. The race Saturday night dominated by the front row. Pole sitter Colton Herta and the guy that joined him on the front row, Scott McLaughlin. They led all of the laps in that race, but in the end, it was the timing of the pit stop that was the difference for Scott McLaughlin. And our Alex Wolf caught up with him earlier today to recap the win at Iowa last week and to preview this weekend in Toronto.
Winner last Saturday night at Iowa Speedway, Scott McLaughlin. Scott, I know it was a big deal for you in the moment to get that first oval win, but now with a few days to think about it, has it just gotten even more of a proud accomplishment for you?
Yeah, and that and the track record, I think. I don't realize how cool that was. You don't really. I've got 2 track records now, which is pretty cool. But no, I think, it was nice, bloody nice, but business as usual right now. Just got to get on with the job, and I'm just thankful that we had that weekend. It's put us back in the championship, and we've got a really good shot this weekend to go even closer.
Sort of assess your season to date as we're in this last race before the summer break, and just how you grade yourself and the outlook for that. I guess the second half will be coming up.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too up and down for my liking. I'd probably say like a B, maybe a B plus if I'm lucky, but I think we've had really good speed, so I think our speed wise is A minus. I've been right there or thereabouts every weekend, but the execution rate from my end hasn't been that great. So it's been nice to get 2 wins on the season, but I think we could have been a lot better off if I had made a couple of less mistakes. So that's on me, but I'm trying to get us back in the hunt here.
One of the things I noticed when I'm covering your pit, listening to the radio with you and your strategist, Kyle Moyer, it seems like you guys just click. We talk about these strategists and driver combinations, that their personalities are the same. It's just, if I could describe the 3-car radio timing stand to a car, it just seems like chill.
Yeah.
And what's it like to have somebody like that, like Kyle, that you have total trust in and can crunch the numbers with strategy?
Well, I think, the timing stand, I'm very lucky that I've had basically the same group for a number of years now. But there's a lot of trust there, and you've got to have that trust because they see a lot more than you do. And Kyle has just done it for so long. He's worked with amazing drivers. He's worked with the Villeneuves. He's worked with the Andretti's, Danica Patrick, like everyone along the road and seen it all. So I have a tremendous amount of trust in Kyle. He's a great guy, and I think he knows when I'm about to spin off the Richter scale. So he knows how to sort of bring me back to life, and I think I do the same for him sometimes too, with some exciting restarts and whatnot. So we enjoy it together and have a lot of fun.
One of the things that's added to the discussions you have in the engineering room with the timing stand, these new hybrid units, and these 2 disciplines, the road course in Mid-Ohio, the short oval at Iowa. Have you noticed maybe any differences between the car with the hybrid to before it?
Yeah, it's just probably the weight. It's probably the biggest thing. And then just the way that you've got a lot more stuff going on in your head, looking at numbers on the dash and when to deploy and whatnot. So you've got a lot of balls you're juggling as you're running 180, 190 mile an hour. So, but it's fun. I really enjoy that. I've always been a hyperactive driver. I move my hands everywhere and enjoy moving my bars multiple times during the lap. So this is right up my wheelhouse. So I'm really enjoying it.
So we'll look ahead to this weekend, the street course in Toronto, your 3rd trip up here with Team Penske. What do you think's the outlook, and what do you think about this course, the chance for the track walk, is maybe how it's changed with the little idiosyncrasies from year to year?
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed this track. I enjoyed the historic nature of it and how long we've been racing here for. I haven't probably been as fast as I want to be here, so I'm really working hard. This was an emphasis on us in the off-season to be better at, so hopefully all the work that we've put in the back end will be okay.
And lastly, I know, of course, you were a big golf guy. Did you get up early this morning and watch some of the British Open?
No, they're all playing bad. So all the guys that I'm like, so I haven't really had much to watch. So there's a lot of people over the cut line that I'm cheering and betting on. So I watch a bit of the highlights and bit now, but currently cheering on a couple of people to get my parlay back going. So we're yeah.
Well, we hope that you'll have not only good luck with the parlay, but good luck on the track this weekend.
Plan, absolutely. Cheers.
Well, David Land, in my opinion, that personality alone has made him a great add to the NTT IndyCar Series, and the fact that he's adapted very, very well and is a darn fine race car driver.
Scott McLaughlin has been such a fantastic addition to this paddock. If you aren't already, follow him on Twitter, or X, I guess that's what we're calling it now. I mean, he's a great follow. He's always got something to say about any and all of the drama that's going on in IndyCar racing, and it's always the great sarcastic Australian humor that we love so much. So, yeah, Scotty Mac, great on and off the racetrack to follow, I'd say.
So the first 10-minute session, the clock is starting to roll now, and Matthew Brabham, we can look up on our multi-screen monitor that also gives us timing and scoring and access to so much data that comes off of these race cars, and we see that there are a handful of teams that have decided to put all those alternates. And, you know, sometimes when we see those alternates go on, those of us kind of on the outside looking in may work just simply under the assumption that they're working on strictly qualifying sims. But I think now, with the advent of the hybrid, I think it's equally important to figure out what the DEG is going to be like and to compare those two so they know how to stack those tires when it comes to race day.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen big differences in the tires, and Firestone always is adjusting the tires between races and, you know, improving things or deliberately making things worse to create better racing and differences between the tires. And yeah, we see a few teams out there on the alternate tire and a few drivers and teams out there on the primary still, and you know, there's so many different things that you can do. I mean, even just scrubbing the tires in the first practice session can put a heat cycle on them. You just do one lap really slow, and it could last longer in the race. So, you know, there might be some guys doing that. I've seen a couple of people go out and in on the alternate tires, and then obviously we see people doing qualifying runs, and then obviously we just see them running around lap after lap. And it keeps getting worse and worse. They're just seeing where the DEG goes. But, I mean, it's hard in the first practice session to make a decision on what you want to do. And obviously, with this new system here with practice and these groups, you know, everyone's going to have a different idea, just how they had different ideas about the hybrid system as well.
After a really solid 45-minute session for Colton Herta, in which he was in the top three all throughout the course of the session, he is P2, Alex Wolf, early on in this 10-minute session.
Yeah, and we're seeing some alternate strategies are differing from the top two in that 45-minute all-skate, as right now out in the group on track right now, Colton Herta, he went out on a scuff set of the primaries. They have the alternates leaned up against the pit wall. In fact, they're starting to have some movement. The pit board's going to come out, and they're going to put those alternates on, so to try to maybe get a accurate simulation of what they'll have to do in the first round of qualifying tomorrow. In the next group, Alex Palou will be going out, and they already have those alternates bolted on the DHL Honda, so he'll immediately be heading out on the alternates when he goes out onto the track for his 10-minute session.
Basically, it boils down to the even-numbered pit boxes in this first session, and then the next 10-minute session will be the odd-numbered pit boxes. That's kind of how they divide this thing up. So there have been 14 takers so far in this session. So it's Armstrong, Herta, Rahal, McElrea, Simpson, Dixon, then Rasmussen, Rob, Sowery, Canapino 10th fastest, Lundgaard, Nolan Siegel, Linus Lundqvist, and Santino Ferrucci. Oddly enough, Matt Brabham, there seem to be a lot of rookies in this group.
Yeah, you know, just how it plays out, and we'll see tomorrow too. There could be, you know, usually the groups are pretty even in qualifying, but you can get a weak group or a strong group just depending on how it all falls. And yeah, I mean, it looks to me like Herta is just flying right now. I mean, he's in the mix of an alternate group around him. I mean, he's just running just as fast as all the guys on alternates right now. Armstrong has ran the alternates, Rahal, Siegel, Canapino all on alternates, and Herta, Ferrucci, and then surprisingly Hunter there are the fastest guys on the primary so far. So it looks to me like Herta was doing a qualifying run where, you know, in qualifying you run the primary tire first, you get the banker lap in, and as I said, I think he had his alternates lined up ready to go. So that might be a full qualifying simulation, but he's running qualifying speed, at least compared to Armstrong and Rahal right now.
And Christian Lundgaard, the most recent pole sitter here on the streets of Toronto. Colton Herta, former pole sitter here. Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon, Will Power, David Land, all guys that have won poles that are entered this weekend.
Yeah, and the pole position traditionally here at Toronto is very, very important. It's important to start up front pretty much at any street course, but especially here at Toronto, especially because you can kind of avoid some of that stuff that happens down at turn 3. But it's interesting to Matt's point that Colton Herta, he has now switched to the alternates, but no one who has run on the alternates yet has gone faster than Colton Herta's primary lap time in the previous 45-minute session. So to everyone's point about Herta, that was super impressive that he did that on the primaries, and I'm very curious as he begins to start another hot lap, how fast is Herta about to go on these alternates? I think we're about to find out.
And the interesting thing, Matt, is that ideally, and it's not happened until, a couple of weekends ago at Mid-Ohio when the drivers talked about it. Now, understand that Firestone spent the offseason developing tire compounds with a certain weight in mind, thinking the hybrid was going to be unveiled at St. Pete. It didn't happen until Mid-Ohio, and so up until that time, there really wasn't the deg that you typically like to see in an alternate. I mean, the ideal scenario for an alternate, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to get that instant gratification to where it heats up quick, gives you a lot of grip, but in the short term, it's going to fall off pretty quickly in terms of the deck, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of things going on, with shipping worldwide, and it's been hard for Firestone to just produce the tires. I know we've had problems in Indy NXT. I've been doing tire testing for Firestone in that car on the ovals, and yeah, I mean, it's difficult when you have X factors thrown in there and the schedule gets changed as in terms of when and what the cars are doing with the development of the hybrid, and it kind of just the game plan kind of gets mixed up, and Firestone have a game plan for the whole year, and they're maximizing these tires performance to the ultimate level, and they obviously do a fantastic job, because you see a lot more failures and things happen in other series, and INDYCAR you rarely ever see that, and it's just and I think the tires quite good for racing too, but in terms of the degradation, I mean, it's been up and down. I mean, it's always different at different tracks, and it'll be interesting to see how it kind of plays out here, but certainly the primary right now was quite close in terms of lap time, but yeah, early in the weekend.
Colton Herta, we just got a glimpse of him testing the width off of turn number 11, made the slightest of glance with the right rear on that race car and continued on. He's currently P3. Felix Rosenqvist has gone to the top of timing and scoring for this group with about 90 seconds left. 61-3-3-2, Armstrong, Herta, Lundgaard, and Rahal the top 5. Siegel, Canapino, Ferrucci, McElrea, and Lundqvist the top 10. Then Rasmussen, then Toby Sowery, Kiffin, Simpson. So those are among the 14 drivers that are in this session, and the rest of the group will go in about a minute 20 or so. Happy to have David Land, Alex Wolf, Matt Brabham with us. Matt's going to be with us today and tomorrow. And Matt, it's interesting the way it's laid out. We got the answer a couple of weeks ago from our good friend Dave First, Vice President of Communication for the NTT IndyCar Series. Davey speculated throughout the course of the year why they would run the alternates on Friday and not have access to them for the final practice session on Saturday. And Dave says essentially that kind of forces the team's hands to go out and do their qualifying sims on Friday, and they think what it boils down to is making sure that we have plenty of track activity, plenty of opportunity for the teams to learn with both compounds, but most importantly to put on a good show for the fans on Friday. So that's why we won't see those alternates in that first session tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, for Firestone as well, because, if no one runs the alternate and we get too late into the weekend, if they need to put adjustments or regulations on cambers and tire pressures, it makes it a difficult job for those engineers as well. There's Firestone engineers up and down pit lane. They're always checking the tires. And, yeah, I mean, it obviously is nice for the fans, too, to see cars going fast. I mean, that's something that they show up to see. And, obviously there's a noticeable difference when you see a car in a qualifying lap as opposed to full tanks and or just scrubbing tires.
Checker flag is out on this session, and David Land. It looks like Santino, Ferrucci, McElrea, Lundqvist, and Rasmussen turned very few laps, if any, on the alternates. And this brings to mind what we've seen teams over the past few years like Dale Coyne do. If they feel like they have a good setup on those primary tires, that's usually what they'll do to get themselves into the round of 12 if possible when qualifying comes on Saturday. So there's a method to their madness sometimes. We may not be aware of it initially.
Oh, for sure. And it opens up some strategy options, right? The more tires you save, or maybe the more the tire that you think you're going to have an advantage on that you focus on setup-wise, that can help you a lot. It's interesting that not everyone seemingly took advantage of being able to use an alternate set of tires in that practice session. It surprises me a little bit. What doesn't surprise me is that Colton Herta is on the top of the time charts once again at a 101.0. So Colton did go faster eventually, but I think this is interesting, and maybe it's something Matt can kind of talk about. Is that Herta? It seemed like it took him 3 or 4 laps to actually build up to that lap time. So Matt, kind of describe that. I mean, what do you think that was all about? Does it take a few laps to get these alternates working on Toronto?
Well, usually the alternates are on straight away, you know, the out lap. And I've even been on Herta's timing stand at Long Beach when he started losing the tire on his very first lap, halfway around the lap, and he was complaining in the last couple of corners. But to see that, I mean, it's early in the weekend, but that's generally a sign that the alternates are going to last longer than what they usually do. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But, I mean, he's super strong. Rosenqvist was second there, and those two cars are obviously got the Andretti setups on them and with the alliance there with Meyer Shank. But, I mean, they're looking really strong, and that's a great start to the weekend for them. And I think they're going to be serious factors for Paul. And obviously Palou in this next group is going to be a serious factor as well.
Group number 2 already gets the green flag, and they are headed out for their 10-minute session. Want to give you an idea of what the schedule looks like tomorrow. You can join us tomorrow morning at 10:30 Eastern time. It'll be you'll have a 1-hour window to get the 45-minute practice session in, and then we'll get a bit of a break, and then 2:45 tomorrow afternoon we'll have the knockout qualifying format of the Firestone Fast 6. Then on Sunday at 10 a.m. an IndyCar warm-up session, which runs 30 minutes, and then flag-to-flag coverage of the race begins at 1 p.m. Eastern. Back to Alex Wolf.
Felix Rosenqvist has gotten out of the number 60 car for Meyer Shank Racing, and Felix pretty fast in that session. How'd the car feel?
Pretty good. Track is pretty green, so obviously bumpy and slippery to start with, but I think it got to us. I think our setup was kind of paying dividends towards the end of the session. Obviously Colton was a bit ahead, but we were P2 in that group, so pretty good start. Still some things to tweak. Pretty happy with it.
How'd the balance feel on the various tire compounds?
Not too different. Obviously the reds they felt way better. It felt like they kind of, you could lean on the car a little bit more. The blacks are hard to get up, and they're just not as good over the bumps as well because they're harder. So I enjoy the reds. I think, like always, it's very hard to know which one is going to be better over a stint. But it's been a bit mixed this year with the blacks and reds. But overall, good on both, I say.
Felix Rosenqvist pretty happy with his Meyer Shank Racing Honda as he looks ahead to tomorrow.
And qualifying has not been the issue, Matt Brabham, for Felix Rosenqvist. In the first part of the season, things went pretty well for them. Started the season with 4 consecutive top 10 results, but it's been about 5 races now since we've seen that car in the top 10. And as we get toward the close of the season, if you're not in contention for a championship, at the very least, you want to end with a string of podium finishes or top 5s to give yourself a little momentum, something to feel good about going into the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his form in the beginning of the season, getting pole after pole, was something crazy. I mean, it was awesome to watch, and obviously, I'm not sure if it was just the tracks or the differences in the schedule, or other people just finally catching up or figuring out what he was doing. But no, he was on fire there in the beginning, and then hasn't quite as been a factor in qualifying for pole in the last couple of races. But I think seeing that speed and hearing him talk about the car, and he's quite happy. He's definitely got the formula for getting things right for that one lap in qualifying, and obviously the races have been something else. But no, I think for this weekend he's looking really good, and as I said, put on such a good performance in the beginning of the year, and he's gonna want to finish like that at the end of the year. But yeah, I think everyone's getting better as the year goes on.
And David, I think a successful debut for David Malukas for that race team to start the season. 26th place finish at Iowa, but rebounded pretty nicely with a 13th place finish in race number 2. We'll get David's comments on that after we hear from Colton Herta.
Colton Herta up on the timing stand. You were quick on both the compounds on the stopwatch. How to feel in the cockpit?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're in the right direction here. Felt very similar to the car that we brought the last 2 years, which is good. We finished on the podium the last 2 years and had chances at wins. So hopefully we can keep going. There's still some stuff to work on, as always, but a really good start for us.
How's with the new hybrid and also with the surface just from year to year, how's the track feel from last year compared?
I mean, it's definitely a little bit less bumpy in the places that we've repaved going into this year, which is nice, but you still get some of those bumps that have been here for many, many years, a couple decades. It's a fun track. I love racing here. I love coming to Toronto. It's always a privilege to get up here and have a race, so we're excited for it.
Well, we'll let you get to debrief with the team, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, and we've got an issue on the course, red flag condition, and Matthew, you're looking at the replay now, and it looked like Alexander Rossy just got into the turn a little too hot.
Yeah, it's a super common area of the track because the timing line is actually right there on the exit, and we've seen that. We've seen Will Power, I remember, I think, getting pole at some point, but by hitting that wall. But you can see he stops right short of the timing line there in the wall, in the fence, and yeah, he just got a little bit wide, a little bit too hot on the entry, and you can see he's just in the gray area of the track, and there's just dust coming up off the car, behind the car, even before he hits the wall, so he just got offline there, a little bit too deep, and but yeah, I think that's going to be something that we see, and it's going to be quite common this weekend, is seeing those cars go for that timing line and end up in the wall there.
And it looks like the safety crew has some attention focused on that left wrist of Alexander Rossy as well.
Yeah, it's not a good sign because I know Briscoe quite a few years ago ended up breaking his wrist hitting the wall here. It's definitely with no power steering, when you hit the wall and you don't take your hands off the wheel in time, it's actually a huge issue, and he's really
yeah, looks like he's
onto
holding
that
the
wrist.
Right. Yeah, he's holding the right one. Actually, got the glove off of that right hand, and yeah.
He's a pretty tough character too. So to see him showing he's kind of like the poker face guy in the field. You never know his emotions. So
Yeah.
to see him out of all the drivers holding his hand there, we'll see here. They're doing a replay. He's got his hands on the wheel. Just clips the tires there before he hit the wall, and I don't think he was expecting that. So he left his hand on the wheel, and it just ripped it out of his hand there. And yeah, that's quite a common injury.
Yeah, that typically too. That left front suspension, those suspension on those cars, usually pretty tough, but that was pretty much a direct hit toward the end of that tire barrier, which knocked that left front wheel off of that car. And now that we see him climbing into the AMR INDYCAR safety, the medical vehicle, it looks as though that he's not quite favoring that right wrist as much as he was. So hope for good things for Alexander Rossy, that's for sure. Now let's get you to kind of get us caught back up and put a period on our discussion about how David Malukas has done, David.
Yes, David Malukas. You wouldn't have known, right, that he had been out for half of the season with the way he started at Laguna Seca. I thought that was extremely impressive. He had, I believe, a puncture in the race, which took him out of a potential top 10 finish, but he still finished in the top half of the field, which is exceptional and better than that 66 car had done all season long. When you talk about the Iowa weekend, it started good until you got into the first corner and he caused a big crash. But I think that David Malukas has certainly proven that he still belongs. The wrist isn't an issue for him. He's still right there and competitive. The problem across the board, really, for the Meyer-Shank Racing team, we were just talking about Felix, has been the races. They haven't been able to put them together, generally speaking, and that's been a problem whether we're talking about Felix Rosenqvist or whether we're talking about David Malukas or someone else. We're seeing a slow-motion replay of the Alexander Rossy incident that I just kind of wanted to point out. He did try to get his hands off the wheel. It almost looked like his thumb got caught in the wheel when it snapped. Right. I mean, I guess maybe Matt can speak to how crucial it is to actually get your hands off the wheel in a situation like that, and why the wheel snaps are so dangerous in Indy cars. Matt?
Yeah, it just comes down to the way the car's designed. There's no system in between the direct drive of the wheel and the drive shaft and the push rod. So if the front wheels touch anything, the force of that goes right through into the hands of the driver, and that's why we see the drivers take their hands off the wheel before any crash, because as soon as it touches anything, the force comes right through the wheel and it goes straight into your hands, and your hands and your wrists are quite weak in comparison to the rest of your body, and you can hit the wall and get 89 G-forces worth of force in some circumstances. So to get that in your hands is quite a bad thing. And I think for Rossy, to me, if you look at it, there's a little short distance before the wall and the tires, and I think Rossy's looking down the track and he still has his hands on the wheel just as he clips the tire barrier, and I think Rossy was looking down the track and thinking, I got time to take my hands off the wheel before I hit the actual wall, but just clipped the edge of that tire barrier, and I think it caught him off guard, because you do see him try to take his hands off the wheel, but it's just that split second too late.
So 12 cars have turned a lap so far. The clock has stopped with 6:48, which they're going to do all they can to give this group their 10 minutes. McElrea, VK, Rasmussen, Power, Malukas, the top 5. Newgarden, Simpson, Kirkwood, Fittipaldi, Grosjean, McLaughlin, and Sowery, the 12 cars that have turned a lap so far. The fastest is McElrea at a 62.610. Other half of the doubleheader last weekend at Iowa Speedway. Hard to believe. Will Power's last oval track victory nearly 5 years ago at Pocono. He now has 10 career oval wins, and our Alex Wolf caught up with him earlier today.
Well, if you're only as good as your last race, Will Power is very good. The most recent winner at Iowa Speedway, and just I know it was a big win for you at Iowa Speedway, and I think you talked after the race, checked off some boxes as far as goals for the season went.
Yes, I did, yes. I wanted to win an oval. I've always wanted to win at Iowa. I've tried for many years, and put me back in the championship game, so all good stuff.
For somebody with the experience of yours, I mean, what's it mean at this point to be able to get goals like that, like winning at a track you've always wanted to win at, and just shows that you're constantly chasing things?
Man, massively satisfying, those sort of things. It's just every time you get a win, you feel extremely satisfied because they're so hard to get. And to be at this point in my career running at the front and fighting the championship still, I'm lucky and put 100% effort into it.
And now, as you said, into the championship hunt, going into, of course, a lot of ovals to close the season. Of course, a Toronto track you've had success at. You've got Portland coming up. Where's your confidence at as far as chasing another championship?
I think we have a great chance. I would say if it was road and street courses to finish, Palou would be the favorite because he could dominate on those, as we've seen. But being ovals, it kind of brings him back to us, and I think we're pretty even there. It will be interesting. We have a great chance, a very good chance.
What do you think now coming to Toronto, of course, a street course? And for the fans out there that see a road course, a street course, and think, well, they're both right and left-hand turns, they're the same. What are maybe some of the differences between road course and street course driving style?
It's the difference in grip levels as you go through a corner. There's so many different patches and cement patch in the middle, so you have good grip, then you have no grip, then you have good grip again on the exit. You have a lot of bumps under brakes, a lot of bottoming, a real rough and tumble track. You got to manhandle the car to get the lap time, so quite different to a smooth mid-Ohio style track where everything's the same grip level and got to be very neat and tidy.
Is that something that you have to sort of compute? You do the track walk, you see the different surfaces. You have to sort of be looking ahead and thinking ahead of what those different surfaces are and what it might do with the grip level? Yeah, you do. You get a pretty good idea after running on the simulator because it simulates that pretty well. But you know from the past how difficult it is to land on a setup that is a good compromise. So I think you can do it in two different philosophies here, so just even within our team we have completely different setups, so it's a real driver's track, and it's very difficult to be mistake-free over a lap. And lastly, of course, we're going into that 3-week break. I think everybody's ready for it, but the reason for that break, the Summer Olympics going on, have you ever thought about if Will Power was to compete in the Summer Olympics, is there an event that you'd like to try?
There probably would be like the 1500 or the 5,000 run. Yeah, my body type and my running would be that. Couldn't be a sprinter. I don't know. I mean, I'm very fast in a sprint. I love sprinting, but not fast enough to train up to be as fast as those guys, but I could train up for a very fast 5,000.
I guess I wasn't sure, because now this year with breakdancing being involved, I didn't know if you had done that back in the day, if maybe you could represent Team Australia there.
I did do a bit of breakdancing. My brother did, but I think they should consider go-karts. They've looked at it. I know they've been pushing for it. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, if there's breakdancing, surely, and skateboarding.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Surely we can get go-karting.
Surfing's in there now. I think go-karting
Where's
is no-brainer.
go-karting? Yeah, electric go-karts. You can do it.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk to the IOC over the break, and we'll watch you this weekend. Look forward to seeing what you can do.
Excellent. Thank you.
I do like this willpower for sure. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But while we were hearing from Alex Wolff and Will Power, we saw Hunter McElrea go into the runoff area. He was able to get back underway. And Matt Brabham, no such luck in turn number 8 for Linus Lundqvist.
Yeah, no, he's in the fence as well, and exactly the same thing as what Rossy did. Same corner, obviously just pushed a little bit too hard on entry. It's really bumpy there. It's probably one of the most bumpiest sections of the track on entry, and same thing. He just turned in he just broke a little bit too late to begin with, got a little bit wide on the entry, and then once he got the left side of his car in the gray area, you just saw all the dust kick up, no grip, and just slid sideways right into the wall. Luckily for him, he hit the wall earlier and than Rossy, so he hit the tires, whereas Rossy's incident was tires and then pure wall and concrete. So yeah, not good for him.
So your driver's memory here, I know for years, seemingly since the beginning of time under its current configuration, there have been bumps upon entry to driver's left, a manhole cover, going into turn number 9 at Long Beach. And over the years, I have noticed, especially recently, that drivers have realized that that's always there. It can upset the balance. It can upset the grip. It can affect your braking going into that corner. So whenever possible, they take a little bit different line through there. Will drivers see what has happened with Linus Lundqvist and Alexander Rossy and notice how pronounced the front end of the car is when they hit that bumpy area? Are they going to have to make an adjustment to their entry point?
Yeah, I think everyone watches after the session, but during the session, it's hard for the drivers to see these things. And generally, the team managers have so much going on in terms of the setup and the engineering, and they don't really see exactly what happened either. They see the crash, and then they put their head in their computer and immediately go to work on trying to figure out the next change, because they know they have time to change the car. But no, I think that's always been a problem there in that corner. That it's the same as what you were talking about Long Beach. There is a manhole cover there on the left side on the entry, and you do have to adjust your line. But I think what kind of lulls the drivers into a false sense of security is just how good the damping is on these cars, that you don't feel it, and it's smooth until it goes wrong. And then you're like, oh, no, like I feel it now. I'm sliding. I'm heading towards the wall, and that was a rough hit over the bumps. But, yeah, no, I think it just kind of lulls the drivers in false sense of security. I mean, obviously, we saw Herta on board and Pelot when they were pushing. It was just all over the place, and I think Will Power was just talking about it too, going over the patches. It's a track you have to manhandle, and but when you have a track like that, it's easy to make mistakes and get it wrong.
Davey has always said, and you can agree with him on this, understeer and oversteer both are equally difficult, but both of them are still easier than no steer when those cars, the front wheels get off the ground. Is that right?
Yeah. I think it's pretty rare that the actual wheels come off the ground, but what they do at tracks like this, it's especially amazing to see the photographers after the session when you go back and you look at the still shots and you see the inside front wheel off the ground quite commonly with these cars, especially when they're running quite soft for the bumps. But obviously you're in the air, you can't steer, but no, at a place like this, it's usually you go to a normal track and you have one problem. You hear all the drivers come in from a track like this and they say, oh, well, I got everything. I got understeer, oversteer, I got wheels off the ground, and it's different every corner.
So, checkers on the session. We've got McElrea, Rasmussen, Power, Siegel, Malukas, Newgarden, Simpson, Kirkwood, Fittipaldi, Grosjean, McLaughlin, VK, Sowery, Pelot, and Lundqvist, with the clock showing 0 now. Let's get an update from pit road with Alex Wolff.
Well, we have been tipped off. David Land mentioned that he had heard about a potential issue for Pato O'Ward, and I went and checked with the team. And in fact, they did have an issue during this split session where it was a hybrid coolant pump failure for the 5 cars. So that is something to keep an eye on for the Arrow McLaren team, the winner of the Honda Indy 200 at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, with some issues in that practice session.
Well, there's no question, and Davey and I have talked about this over the years. If you're going to have issues, Matt Brabham, if they're going to crop up, you would just assume, as frustrating as it is, them crop up early in the weekend rather than on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the same for driving mistakes as well. You know, you try and get all the mistakes or the things that go wrong out of the weekend, out of the way early, but, you know, it's always a negative thing because it just affects your whole plan for the weekend, and it puts you behind the 8 ball there. But, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously we're still having a few issues here and there, and it could be a factor later on in the weekend for other teams, which, you know, could affect things, especially the championship as well.
So, in terms of how this debrief is going to go, I mean, this session, obviously, you've got a 45-minute all skate in which we saw only the use of the primaries, and then these 2 10-minute sessions in which primarily alternates were used. So, after the debrief tonight, what will that final practice session look like tomorrow? What would you like to do if you were a driver before we go qualifying?
I mean, I think obviously the drivers were wanting clear laps, and the first group got that, but the second group has been put out to lunch. They got no laps. I think Hunter was the only one that really got a fast time in there, and then the rest of the cars are seconds, if not 10 seconds off the pace, and that's just because they never got a clean lap. I mean, they had that was just them. You know, all the guys in the second group are going to be complaining because they didn't get a run. They missed out on a big portion of the practice session, and they're behind all the guys that ran that first group. So it didn't really work out to plan. But obviously, INDYCAR are open to changing things, and they work with the drivers, which I think at the end of the day, it makes the series so great and makes it what it is. But, you know, today, second group, you know, I'm sure all those guys are going to be complaining about the red flags and the possibilities that having 2 different groups at the end of a session cause.
8th fastest in this 10-minute session, Kyle Kirkwood. Alex Wolf's caught up with it.
Kyle Kirkwood taking a well-deserved drink after that practice session. Of course, Andretti with a lot of success on street courses you have with wins in Long Beach and Nashville out the 27-car field this afternoon.
Yeah, it felt good. Just didn't do any laps. Need to do laps tomorrow to actually get times in. So, yeah, but the car feels really good. I think Colton did some laps there and showed that he was fast. So, and we're driving pretty much the identical cars. So, once again, quick on street courses, so it's positive.
So does that give you a lot of confidence going into not only the debrief room, but tomorrow when you see the success that he has with the similarities?
The lack of laps doesn't give me confidence because we don't really know what to work on now. But the pace gives us confidence based on Colton's and us as well. Even though we didn't do any laps, we're still like, okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's positive. It points towards confidence, so it's good.
Well, we'll hopefully see some laps for you tomorrow, and we'll see you then.
Yeah, thank you.
In my 29 years of covering this sport, Matthew Brabham, there was, I think, one fairly irrefutable fact. The only time that you drivers as a people are happy is when you get to victory lane.
Yeah, I mean, any track that you like is a track that you win at, and yeah, obviously Kyle was in the second group there, and yeah, he's complaining. I'm sure all those guys are upset. Probably except Hunter because he was the quickest, but no, I mean they're all fighting for track time, and you know if you have a red, you pretty much get toasted out there, and you lose an advantage. I mean, it just splitting up the groups it opens the opportunity for one group to get obviously miss out.
Well, brother, I'll tell you what, it's been a while since you've been with us, but for you, it was like riding a bike. I mean, you hit the ground running for sure and offered tremendous insight today. I know Davey is appreciative of you subbing for him, and he's probably been listening a fair amount of time and would probably tell you to dial it back a little bit because you don't want to push him out of the seat entirely when we get to Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. I can't be too good at this because ultimately he's the one driving a race car this weekend. He's racing this weekend, and I'm not. And obviously, I don't want that to be the case. I want it to be the other way around. I'd rather him be doing the radio and me myself driving.
Well, great job, and we look forward to your insight during practice and qualifying tomorrow.
Oh, cheers, mate.
All right, Matt Brabham, happy to have him with us. And David Land, I know it's a busy weekend for you. You're going to have eyes and ears and camera and audio and everything else on both this race here at Toronto this weekend and also the return of NASCAR to the Oval at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400.
Yeah, how exciting is it? After a couple of years on the road course, which I thought was actually a pretty decent race from an entertainment standpoint, but you cannot beat the prestige of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval, and certainly the importance of that event, not only to the Speedway, but this radio network. It's really exciting to be on it this weekend, although I'm not in Toronto. It's just kind of funny how it works, how there's an INDYCAR race and a NASCAR race taking place on the same day. That's wild, but yeah, I think we're all looking forward to the Brickyard and also Toronto. I mean, who could have thought Hunter McElrea in his second official IndyCar session would be P1? I would have liked to have seen the odds on that. That's pretty excellent for Hunter McElrea, regardless of the circumstances.
Well, I'm of the opinion that while certainly the road course race was very entertaining, I think the drivers and the teams all wanted this. I think the majority of the fans wanted, and I think it goes back to being one of the crown jewels on the NASCAR schedule for sure. This is an important weekend for the NTT IndyCar Series because, as I talked to Matt Brabham about earlier, you're going to want some momentum before you get to that 3 or 4 week break.
Absolutely. It's so important, and it's so important as the last street course of the year, the second to last road and street course of the year, the second to last time you'll be turning right all year, hopefully, intentionally anyway. And yes, I mean, you do not want to be going into that long Olympic break stewing on something, sitting there going, man, I wish I hadn't screwed up in Toronto, or I wish I hadn't screwed up in Iowa. You want to have a good taste in your mouth to be able to relax, to be able to rest up, because if you think about it, we've mentioned it a couple of times, Mark, this has been an absolute marathon for the IndyCar teams and the drivers and the crews, for them to get a little bit of time off. And if you can make your mind restful too, you got to rest your body and your mind, Mark. And success, as you said about Matt Brabham and race car drivers, the only way you relax as a race car driver, even a little bit, is winning.
Well, we've had you for 3 to 5 minute segments in the past. This is the first time you've been with us for a whole show. Well done.
And I didn't get kicked out. It's great.
Yeah. We'll have you back again real soon, and it'll be a busy day for us tomorrow. I'll tell you what, before we go, we always do this. Want to give you an opportunity to make sure you let folks know where they can find all your fabulous content throughout the course of the weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. Just search my name on YouTube, David Land, D-I-V-I-D-L-A-N-D. It's 9 letters. It's really easy to find. Just look for the purple letter. I know Davey Hamilton always likes to remind us when he's here that he drove a purple car at one point at the Speedway, so got to give Davey a shout-out too. But yeah, we'll be certainly focused a little bit more heavily on the Brickyard 400 this weekend, although, of course, it helps to sit in the broadcast booth and observe from the best seat that's not at Toronto for sure. So we'll definitely be talking about it Toronto as well, but certainly the focus on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Brickyard 400. It'll be some good coverage. Talked to Austin Cindric, asked him about doing the double. I'm sure you guys will be interested in hearing his answer to that. There's a little, I think that's what we call in the biz a teaser.
That's a tease. That's right, for sure. I mentioned there's more than a few drivers that have developed an interest in it now that they see the way it's been handled by Kyle Larson this year and what he will do moving forward. A reminder about programming tomorrow, 10:30 Eastern Time. A 45-minute practice session for the NTT IndyCar Series. They'll have an hour to get that one in, by the way. And then we'll go qualifying at 2:45 Eastern tomorrow afternoon. And then on Sunday, we'll have the final warm-up session at 10 a.m. Eastern and then flag-to-flag coverage of the race at 1 o'clock. Got to say hats off to our chief engineer, Rick Evans. You folks cannot imagine what a daunting task he has had at his feet to pull off all of our broadcasts with split crews and everything else this weekend. Congratulations to Rick and all the people and our network director, Chris Pollock, for helping making it all possible. Our thanks to Matt Brabham. Our thanks to David Land and Alex Wolf. This is Mark Jane saying so long for now from Toronto.